Hey, how's it going everybody? It's Sketch and welcome back to the channel. And as we go further down the rabbit hole of the F.E.A.R series, we're looking at the sequel, F.E.A.R 2 Project Origin, released almost 5 years later in February of 2009 on the PC, Xbox 360, and the PS3. Developed by Monolith Studios and published by Warner Bros. Interactive, this entry mostly retains the feel of the original, while adding a lot more action into the mix this time around. And the end result is once again another entertaining, but maybe not quite as scary experience compared to the original. So let's go over the story and bring ourselves up to speed, while also not spoiling any of the main points from F.E.A.R 1. You play as Beckett, an operator of the Delta team sent in to take the president of the Armachem Technology Corporation, Genevieve Aristide, and bring her into protective custody, which coincidentally takes place at the exact same time as a reactor exploding not far in the distance, knocking you unconscious in the process. Once you come to, you regroup with your unit and descend into the nearby hospitals underground, and begin the mission to eventually reach Still Island to seek not only refuge but also stop all the way from the previous entry. Gameplay wise, as mentioned earlier, this entry has a heavier emphasis on action, and you'll see pretty quickly that the pacing is a bit faster than the original, throwing into the thick of it almost immediately, though shortly after you'll start to see some pretty grotesque stuff too. The controls have also been tweaked a bit too, since now you can aim down sights more akin to shooters of the late 2000s era. You can also carry more weapons and explosives now as well, so going into most encounters you're more than well supplied. The horror element is still there, even though if it isn't as well pronounced as the first game, but there's still some good scares in the game's roughly 5 to 10 hour campaign, and while it's more action driven, there are some genuinely frightening moments and environments. Also, the mech and turret sections in the game are also pretty damn fun, even if it does kind of take the fear out of F.E.A.R, considering your character is pretty powerful compared to most enemies you'll go up against, with the exception of a couple which are probably going to smoke you a few times. Unlike the original, the AI is not quite as creative with their tactics to go up against you, but this time around they seem to have traded that out for sheer number of enemies as a replacement, and they often just kind of run out at you in waves, and with varying difficulty. Graphics wise, compared to F.E.A.R 1, it looks good, running on a revamped version of their Lithtech engine, and the sprites and environments are much more colorful and vibrant in this game, and the game in general has a brighter palette, and the effects looked awesome with their new coat of paint. The shotgun animation again is pretty sick, reducing replicas to liquid, along with a robust arsenal of weapons to absolutely decimate anything in front of you. The slow motion segments have also had the brightness and saturation kicked up quite a few notches, and also adding a fair amount of detail compared to the original, which had a bit more contrast while it was active. Environments in this entry also look awesome, and the school level towards the end is one of the best parts of the game, and you'll see some pretty varied locales along the way, and also this time with a lot more explosions. Though for every over-the-top action set piece, there is more than a few chilling sections in tow. The transitions between Beckett and Alma's reality produces some pretty genuinely mind-bending segments, and those parts also look pretty sick. Sound-wise, much like the game's graphic engine, the audio has also gotten a bit of a buff here. The voice work and sound effects are also fairly decent, and you might even recognize the voice of Cortana from the Halo series. The explosions and gunfire have also gotten a noticeable punch compared to the original, and activating slow motion also has a nice set of reverb and sounds when things fly apart is still pretty satisfying. The only real downside of this was for all the action segments, the balance was a bit less focused on the horror aspect from F.E.A.R 1. Though while the parts that are there are still decent, and towards the end of the game there are some really awesome scenes that are again pretty gruesome, and even at times unexpected. There's a fair amount of mechanical and visual improvements, and it's definitely worth noting. The story arc just wasn't as creative as maybe it could have been, but it's still fun to play and has some moments that, much like the first one, will stick with you long after playing, so all around it's worth a look. F.E.A.R 2 Project Origin gets an 8 out of 10, and this is another horror FPS that, even though it's not as scary as the first game, remains an entertaining ride to take through Fairport from another perspective. And I thank you again if you found these videos helpful. That's awesome if you can use this as a resource. Check back often, we'll have a couple more horror reviews and just a whole bunch of other stuff coming up in the future. So stay tuned, stay safe out there, and I'll see you on the next one. Take it easy.